And we welcome you to the Cedric Thomas program. Glad you can join us here on this Monday night here on the beautiful campus of Alcorn State University. The Braves Sports Network, 91.7 WPRL, WPRL.org, WMIS WTYJ, 1240 AM, 97.7 FM, Fayette, Natchez, and 90.1 WMPR in Jackson. We're also on Facebook Live, WPRL, as well as YouTube, Braves Sports Network. Glad you can join us here on this Monday night. Braves coming off a big win, 32-10 over Mississippi Valley. We'll look at that game. We'll look back at it with all the highlights. And then we'll look ahead to one of the hottest teams in the conference. Texas Southern's won 4 in a row, 3 in the conference, 3 in a row after a tough loss to Lamar. They won 4 in a row, so one of the hottest teams in the league, along with Prairie View. Some interesting games in the Southwestern Athletic Conference this past weekend. The West and East all of a sudden becoming a little interesting, and the Braves are part of that mix as well. We're here with Braves Head football coach Cedric Thomas. Coach, how you doing, sir? Well, I tell you what, a big win by your team, and we knew Mississippi Valley was going to be a stingy bunch, and we found some things in the second half, and we made some plays in the first half.
Yeah, I thought the coaches did an amazing job just from a game plan standpoint of putting them guys in the best position to be successful. And the young men did a really good job of just executing it. So I thought overall, the first half, those guys did a really good job. And so still got some work on, some things to work on, some things we got to tighten up. But just overall, just the amazing effort that everybody put into it.
One of your favorite phrases is leaving meat on the bone. I hadn't heard that one. But what that means is that, yeah, you did some good things. You did some eating, but you left a lot of stuff out there, a lot of gristle, a lot of stuff that you could still get after.
Yeah, I felt like that the second half. It was actually a tie. I thought we lost the second half, but it was actually a tie. They scored 10, we scored 10. And so, we don't want to cancel out quarters and halves. We want to win each half, and I didn't feel like we did that the second half.
Yeah, you look at that and just trying to put forth a 4-quarter game together, and I hear every coach all over the world talk about putting a 4-quarter game together, and I know you're still trying to look for that.
Yeah, most definitely. And so even when we put the younger guys in, in that fourth quarter, for me, was the developmental piece of getting them to understand, hey, when we get this program, ginning on all, 3 phases consistently, Saturday in and Saturday out, we expected to be able to just kill a gnat with a sledgehammer type mentality, and we still infusing that, from coaches and also the players, but, just wasn't as excited about that fourth quarter.
Is it with today's athlete, and you always talk about the mindset, trying to dominate for 4 quarters, taking your foot off the gas, is that a harder thing to coach now than it was maybe 5 years ago or maybe 10 years ago? That dominant mindset, is it harder to coach now when you're up 28-0, you want to do even more? You got the game in hand, but there's so much more you want to do, and trying to coach that and teach that. Is that harder now than a few years ago?
No, I don't think so. I just think it's more so that, the coaches, the leadership, it starts with us, when players, they can see we kind of letting off and we're calling things just unordinary, or if we're just starting to mass sub, 20, 30 guys in at a time, they can get a feel for, hey, look, this kind of recess ball for us. And so I just wanted to make sure that wasn't the notion that we was giving off as coaches. So my spiel to those guys at halftime, starting with the coaches with us, we're not letting up, but hey, I want to see, the infusion of some younger guys to play, and I want them younger guys, to understand that, hey, when we get an opportunity to play, your objective is to score if you're on offense, and your objective is to stop them on defense.
Yeah, and that definitely is the objective. Let's look at the highlights, Coach, as we dig into it. We won the toss and deferred to the second half. Valley got the football early at their 32-yard line. And after a due-back 31-yard punt, we got the football a minute and a half in to the football game. On a 4th down and 3, Coach, you had a situation where the ball had a 52-yard punt. And just talk a little bit about that. And he did a really nice job the entire game, getting some good punts off. Rogers had a punt in there as well. Just talk about the job he did. Let's start with special teams.
Yeah, I thought like each Monday I come in, that group is really getting better. Coach Fossman is doing an amazing job, and at 6:40 they'll be in there bright and early like that orange juice, man, ready to roll. And so just testament to those guys starting to kind of feel what we want and the expectations of that group. And so those guys are getting better. And I thought, just some of the logistics of the game when, you talk about the pageantry, of the weather and also just the fans and all that. But when you see how that wind is just blowing, in and out, you sitting there talking to your staff, do we do we kick this particular way or do we want to win the second half? And so I thought, just the coaches collectively being able to get the win the first quarter, I thought that was indicative of, what happened. It actually, got us, 2 points because they had to go against the win. We got a good, punt. Meach did a good job of turning the field around. The guys did an awesome job, leaving it on the one, and ended up getting the safety out of it.
I didn't realize how windy it was, and I think in the pregame I was sticking our crowd mic out, and a gust blew the window open. We kind of have it halfway closed, but I didn't pay attention to it. I didn't think it was going to get that windy, and then boom, a big gust came and knocked some of our stuff down in our booth, and I had to tape it shut literally. So the wind definitely was a factor.
Yeah, when you talk about strategy, that was one of those deals, and it's always learning experiences for coaches. I want those guys to be head coaches and be on great staffs, and those are some of the things, at in our coaches meeting, we talked about it. Fossman, he's going to go out, be the first one with the specialist. The first thing I want to know is what the wind's doing, what direction is it, how's it going, what's the MPH behind it. And so, he did a really good job. And then, collectively, I asked the guys, hey, look, do we want to kick? Do we want to win the first quarter? Do we want to win the second quarter? And so it was, hey, coach, just a stingy defense, man. Let's kind of see if we can jump out on these guys and let's take the win. And so it ended up working out for us.
Yeah, and with Duval's punt, that first punt, I highlighted it, that 52-yard punt backed Valley up to their 1-yard line. So they got it at the 1. Out of the shotgun, rush up the middle, and they got a safety. And so we are up 2-0 early.
Yeah, that was one of them special team deals. Shout out to Coach Fossman and having that group ready and to be able to not only just kick it and put it in a situation, but those guys actually downed that football there. Man, I thought that was a big opportunity for us, and we got points out of it.
The key with that is you want to get, and I see this all the time, you want to get ahead of the football when it's inside the 5. You want to get ahead of it to where you don't want to let it go into the end zone. And I thought we did a good job with that.
They did a really, really good job. You got to coach those things. Sometimes it may not look like it, but you got to go over all the nuances of it. And I thought that was an example of guys really executing it.
Well, there was the safety right there for those watching. A good job up the middle, and the Braves led 2-0. And then on the free kick, Coach, it was a situation where on the free kick, nobody touched the football but Valley, and they got the football right there. So as good as the operation was on that end, something you don't see very often. What didn't happen right there is obviously we didn't get our hands on the football, but lack of communication. What happened there is we got the football back.
You can call any special team specialist. I don't know how you line up any other way with that win. Normally you get an option to be able to kick it off or punt it, and he punted. That was really smart by them. And when they punted it, you could see it get off his foot, but it just hangs up in the air. And so everybody's looking for their man to block, but that ball is shanked, and it goes, maybe 7 to 10 yards backwards. So as everybody trying to run to it, we don't have a chance. And that was one of those, cons of going with the wind. But they had opportunity to go against the wind. But punting was really smart because when they punted it, it just hung up in the air relative to kicking it.
So with that, Valley got the football on that situation at the 48-yard line. And we were able to get off the field there, Coach. So, we were able to dodge that particular bullet.
Yeah, I thought, Coach Rowe and that staff, they did an amazing job, just the game plan. We knew number 12, Josh was really athletic with his legs and, had ran around a lot and made some plays. And so we just wanted to put a premium on getting 3 and outs and also just getting off the field without, giving up touchdowns on the first drive.
Well, on that particular punt, 33-yard punt, and then Jacoby Matthews with a 51-yard return to get us out of the hole.
Yeah, constantly getting better, constantly getting better. It's been A+, for those guys. And, it's just amazing to watch from week 1 to now and see how much of the learning piece of it and just the execution that those guys are doing.
So with that 51-yard punt return, we got the ball at Valley's 31-yard line. And on a 2nd down and 10, Cedric Thomas, Jalen Tolbert to Jarvis Rush for 10 yards to add to our lead.
Yeah, it was just good to see that connection. Those guys, we thought, had opportunity to be able to put some points on the board. It's just good to see those guys get a feel for each other and be able to get it in the end zone.
Yeah, you see right here on the pass, and Jarvis Rush, that's a nice protection too, and a nice heavy thrown ball to Jarvis Rush there. Just talk about his development.
Yeah, it's just good to see him, stay in. And, we talk about life, in our everyday, experience with these young men. And he had some rough sledding, early, had some big-time drops, that, he had, but he worked his tail off and he worked himself out the hole. And so he's done an amazing job. He has a great support system and everybody just helping him navigate through, those tough times. And it's just good to see his hard work to come to fruition.
So the Braves with a 9-0 lead at that point. Valley's next drive halfway through the first quarter. at their own 18-yard line. A 4th down and 3, Coach. A 4th and 3 from their 25, and we're able to get off the field. Interesting decision by Coach Terrell Buckley right there.
Yeah, those guys, we was ready for it. We saw some looks that, that could be conducive to them trying to fake it. So we just kind of was just waiting for it. And if he would have kicked it, guys were still ready. And so we was just there, prepared, for anything to come.
So on that 4th and 3, we get the football around the red zone with 5:45 left. And then the penalty, Coach, we got a penalty there on the 1st and 10 from Valley's 21-yard line. And then on a 4th down and 2 from Valley's 13, Reggie Davis on that 4th and 2. We lost a yard there. Talk about the decision on that 4th and 2 to go for it. Obviously, we turned it over on downs as Reggie Davis up the middle.
Yeah, just didn't feel good about, Renzo in that win. So, just didn't want to get an opportunity to that early to have a miscue just with the kicking aspect of it. So decided to go for it and, want to make Valley go into that win, want to maintain that win as long as we could.
So we didn't get it there. So as we fast forwarded to the end of the first quarter, Coach, 9-0. Valley got it with 3:51 left, and we got it late in the first quarter as we were to add to the lead. We got it late in the first quarter at Valley's 44-yard line. So 9-0, Coach, at the end of the first quarter with the win and everything you had to deal with. Talk about that 2-score lead at the end of the first 15 minutes.
Felt good about it. We talked about last week, Valley had been winning pretty much every game at the half, in conference. So we wanted to start out, early and start out fast. And I thought the guys did it. And so, we knew it was going to be a 4-quarter ball game. And so we just wanted to kind of, jump out. And it was good to see, guys start out fast.
And we started out fast in the second quarter. First play of the second quarter, 1st and 10 from Valley's 30-yard line. Tolbert to Ty Warren and Amarian Blakes for the 6-yard reception. We had a 1st and 10 from Valley 16 and Jalen Tolbert to Jacoby Matthews to add to our lead. Jacoby Matthews from 16 yards out.
Yeah, that connection is really starting to flourish. These last couple of weeks, those guys spent a lot of time together. And it was just, really good to see those guys, kind of take the practice aspect and put it together, on the football field and during game day.
Yeah, just you look at the pass right there. Jacoby Matthews, man, he's getting more and more targets. Seems more and more in special teams, more and more as a slot guy.
Yeah, just, finding his niche and, just kudos to him. Had some hardships early. He finding his way through it, working his way out of it. It's just good to see him go out there and, really play well.
Talk about the pass protection, Coach, in this game overall, taking on a Valley team that's stingy against the run. We're going to talk about that, but, that front by Valley and our offensive line, talk about how we're able to hold up.
Yeah, I thought that, Coach challenged them guys, and we challenged them all week, to be able to just stay stern and then move people out the way against their own will. And for the most part, we was excited about that. Played a lot of bodies up front to help with that, and I think we only gave up 1 sack, throwing it, over 30 times. So if we can keep that up and still, be able to move people, want to be able to get a little bit more yards per carry on the run game, but you can't ask no more from Cole Watson and that group, man. They accepted the challenge, and he did an amazing job this week of getting those guys rolling.
How tough of a challenge was it? How hard did you challenge the guys up front?
Very hard. I called them out in front of the whole team in the team meeting last Sunday. I said this game is going to be predicated on them. And, talking to Coach Watson in the coaches meeting, he accepted the challenge also. And so that's what I love about the coaches and not only the players. Ain't no elephants in the room. We understand who we are and what we do and what's our purpose. And so, when we don't do it as well, we're able to call each other out, and step to the front of the carpet and say, okay, I accept the challenge. And I thought they did an amazing job doing that.
Well, the offense got the points up 16-0 there. Then the defense made a statement, Coach. Valley with 13:50 left, got it at the 35-yard line. Picked up a 1st down, 1st and 10 from the 45. Brandon Nunez, pass intercepted by Jeffrey McGelton.
It was just good to see old school Jeff, man, kind of get back rolling, tore his ACL last year against Prairie View and, just start to rehab it. So he's only really been playing the last 2 weeks. And so just to see him kind of get in the groove and, pluck that ball out there, was a really good feeling, not only for him, but just watching the guys see what he went through and then seeing him back out there.
So if you look at that we took it over there after the interception with 12:54 left, we got it right at midfield. And then on a 3rd down and 1 from Valley's 41, out of the shotgun and rush up the middle for 4 yards, a fumble recovered by Mississippi Valley. Talk a little bit about that, the particular turnover.
Was that the one with Reggie?
Mm-hmm.
First one of the year for us, and I was betting and playing with them guys, pretty much all year to see who's going to be the first one to let it down. But that's actually the first turnover from the running back room, and so we understand it. He understands ball security. He said it when he came back over to the sideline, and so he'll be prepared and ready. We understand football is the most important part, of the game, and so we got to maintain the possession. So he understood that, and so he just, got to make a concerted effort. Coach Booz, took care of the punishment on Sunday, and so we know going forward, he'll secure the football even more.
Well, Valley got the football after that turnover with 11:07 left. And there was an illegal block in the back on this particular play, Coach, that kind of helped this drive. Valley got it with 11:07 left in the second quarter. We had 3 penalties on defense, Coach, and on a 4th down and 9, a Nunez pass intercepted by Stamarian Edwards. 3 penalties and an offside illegal block. Just talk about the illegal block penalty. We've had that happen. The offsides, that kind of takes care of itself in terms of the explanation. But the illegal block there, we've had that a few times. Talk about that.
Yeah, Chris just got to, do a really good job of getting his head across. He's coming at an angle, and that guy's running with a, high rate of speed and a high rate of velocity. He just got to settle down. If he can't get his head across, he got to let it go. And so that's just one of those try-hard plays where you got to be smart so we don't put the offense in a bad situation.
Yeah. 3 penalties on that drive, but we're able to hold, Coach, on a 4th and 9. Stamarian Edwards with the pick, 4th and 9 from our 27.
Yeah, it's just good to see old Steve, man, out there. You see his wrist taped up. You see his finger in the sling. He got everything. We call him head, shoulder, knees, and toes because, man, everything on him, was, bothering him. But, man, what a fighter. What a fighter. He's our leader. And for him to go out, man, and play the way he's playing up under the circumstances is really just a blessing.
So the Braves defense gets off the field, and with 1:51 left in the second quarter, Coach, this is where I thought was a big part in this football game. All right, so 1:51 left. You got the timeouts, got it at our 20-yard line, and up in the booth we were thinking, maybe wrongly, I think we were wrong, like take it into the locker room, with the wind and everything that you talked about. 1st and 10 from our 20-yard line on a 3rd and 2, Tolbert to Damian Jones. And just talk about getting Damian Jones back in the act because he had 2 big catches on this drive that made you think maybe we can get some points out of this late drive.
Yeah, well, it really started with, I had that same mindset as you. Mr. Charles just taking it in, bleeding the clock out. I knew I had 2 timeouts. But also, if we got positive yards on 1st down, then I felt like we had a chance. And I thought that's what kind of got the chains moving when we had that positive play on 1st down. And so, looking at the clock, I knew we had time. The deal was just, hey, don't make a bonehead decision, with the win. And knew we had the run game. That's an extension of the pass game for us. And so once we got those positive yards, like you see us, we work the 2-minute drill every single week. And so we knew we had opportunity. Just wanted to be smart and not give it away.
So your initial thought was, let's get into the locker room.
Yeah, it really was. That was it. We had the win in our face and it's blowing. We knew, from a field goal standpoint, we wouldn't get close enough. And if we get that close, then we might as well just go for it. And so, but when we got the positive yards, and sitting there with them 2 timeouts in your pocket, you want to sit there and say, all right, let's see if this team is mature enough to handle this situation. And they did a really good job with it.
Well, on a 3rd and 2, Damian Jones got the 1st down, a gain of 3. And then 1st and 10 from the 31, Jalen Tolbert with a 12-yard run. And then Sewell a 15-yard run. And I'm thinking, okay, now we're definitely looking at the worst, a field goal. Was that kind of where you were at right there? First and 10 from the 43 after that big run by Ja'Cory and Sewell. We got it to our 39-yard line.
Nah, field goal never came in my mind. I knew, Renzo, he don't have a leg in that kind of win. My thing was, if we get an opportunity to score it, we was going to score it. I want to be able to get in position the same way you see us every Thursday. If we can get close enough to where we can get a Hail Mary on like Pine Bluff where it's short and we could get it to the end zone, then we was going to go for what we call Big Ben, is our Hail Mary.
Well, we did have an opportunity, Coach, as we moved the football down the field, a 2nd and 10 from Valley's 34-yard line with no time left. Jalen Tolbert to Jarvis Rush for 34 yards. Final play of the half.
I thought that was huge. I thought the execution was there. It was good to see the practice aspect. We have, those type of scenarios all the time, and they've done a really good job with that. And so to get that, going into the half, I thought was really, really huge, especially with this team that we felt like, wasn't going to lay down for us.
Talk about the play. Talk about the play call.
Yeah, so we had a 4-vert system where, the inside slot. You know, he had an out route, and so we knew he was playing some form of cover too, but you just wanted to kind of occupy the corner, because if he didn't have anything in the flats, then he was just going to continue to sink. And so once he saw the out route, he came off. Quarterback did a really good job. You see him put some air on the ball. Jay is about 6'3". You see him got to get up big and box the safety out. And so I thought the timing and also being on the backside shoulder with that throw was a really good play.
That was huge, Coach. I mean, a minute 51 left. You're at your 20-yard line. You're thinking about everything, the wind especially. You mentioned the wind throughout this entire segment, and so the wind was a factor. Taking it in was a factor, but you saw they were able to get enough to where you were thinking, we can get some points out of this thing.
Yeah, you think about all year also, you know, that's going in the back of your head, because you definitely want to screw it up, you know, still it's just a 2-point game. At the time, I think it was 16-0, you know, and that wasn't enough. You know, we felt like it. And so just got to trust your gut, you know, and trust the guys. And, you know, we do it every day. And so it was just good to see it to come to fruition, you know, at that point.
So it was 16-0, Coach. When you look at that situation and just going up, talk about going into the locker room, you know, with a big situation there as we're up 22-0. Just talk about that, Coach, just being able to get through the first half, get some things going. Our defense stepped up, you know, special teams, back and forth. Just your thoughts, you know. I know you were talking to Cedric Tillman about it, like, yeah, we're up, but, you know, some things still out there.
Yeah, that was it. It was all about finish. You know, we'll party and enjoy it once it's over. But, you know, we've had leads before at halftime and, you know, felt, you know, sick and bad when it was over. And so when you're creating that mindset and you're trying to cultivate that consistently, you know, it's a 0-0 ball game. And for me, if you guys enjoy the game, you know, my thing to them is just keep playing. To the refs, just tell you, hey, look, man, the game is over. But don't be looking at the score, looking at the clock, trying to see how much time left. Just play. And so that was the mentality at halftime. And I challenged first the coaches, you know, because a lot of times coaches can get complacent with play calling on either or side, and leave guys, you know, some situation where they can get back in it. So I challenged the coaches first, and that trickled down to the kids, and we wanted to make sure, young adults, and so we wanted to make sure that those guys understood the message so we could finish this ball game.
So it was 22-0 at the end of the first half. We'll take a timeout here. We'll look at the second half action. Questions, comments, some things to talk about as we get ready for a hot Texas Southern team Saturday at 2 o'clock from Shell Energy Stadium in downtown Houston. The Tigers have won 4 in a row. So we'll get into that when we return. Second half action, second half highlights coming up in 1 minute here on the Braves Sports Network.
The 2025 SWAC football season is almost here, and SWAC TV is set to bring you some of the most anticipated games of the season. Big classics, historic rivalries, and some of the best bands in the land will headline the inaugural slate of 45 football games this fall. Free, live, and on demand on the new and exclusive streaming platform of the Southwestern Athletic Conference. The time is now. SWAC TV is here, building champions for life.
Some names immediately evoke an uncommon sense of family, an unmistakable sense of character, an undeniable sense of legacy. Always. Where trailblazers and innovators chart new paths of possibility. Where academic rigor empowers the strength of character to lead with knowledge and integrity. It's a name that harkens back to over 150 years of truly making a difference in our world. Always Alcorn.
Welcome you back to the Cedric Thomas program. You can text a question, 601-301-2611 on X Tall Man Radio. You can text a question or tweet a question anytime, and we appreciate all the participation throughout the course of this season. Win or lose, we appreciate the comments. All right, let's look at this third quarter, Coach. The penalties, and I'm going to put it out there right away. The penalties in the third quarter was just, I know it's something that it was tough for you to watch on the sideline.
Yeah, you know, we just got to control our emotions, and you know, I'm fine with the in-game plays. It's going to be a little hole in here. It's going to be a little grabbing, you know, from a pass interference standpoint. Some of those are always subjective, but you know, some of the personal conduct penalties, you know, we got to clean up, and it starts with me. But we definitely had that situated. But guys playing hard and playing, you know, with tenacity and enthusiasm, you know. That's just a part of the game, but it's just some of those penalties that just no-nos inside of what we're doing. We ain't teaching it. We're not teaching it, and we won't let guys continue to go out there and play it. We're going to behave as such.
The line between playing with the ferocity and the intensity and then where it crosses the line. Everything's about boundaries, and So you have to kind of balance that out in this very physical game.
Yeah, you do. And then also the refs got to be the ones that kind of mediate it. They can't just sit and watch, in this barbaric sport. Those guys are back and forth and everybody's heated, and it's easy to say, they're going to catch the second person. But when somebody, punches you or somebody steps on you or somebody even, spit on you, we've had that situation before, they still young adults that's, trying to, establish that emotional intelligence. So I think the refs also got to do a good job, just kind of stepping in and making sure. And they do a good job, at times of coming telling me, hey, watch, this particular number. And so, I take them out, and just talk to them about it. But it's a community. It takes everybody that's on that football field to help these young brothers, make some of these decisions.
And penalties definitely helped Valley as we got into the second half. Let's look at the second half highlights, folks. 14:56 left. Of course, we won the toss deferred to the second half. So we got it at the 22-yard line. Coach kind of picked up where we left off. A late touchdown to end the first half and a touchdown to begin the second half. We got it at our 22-yard line. And on a 3rd down and 6, Jalen Tolbert to Ty Warren for 74.
Yeah, we had a pressure. You'll see it come right in his face, and he stood up and did a really good job. Looking the barrel down the barrel. Versus this throw. And Tyron ran a good route. He wrapped around the overhang, sat down. Quarterback put it on him, and we knew once he caught it. We know how he feel about his legs, and it was just good to see him. Finally catch one and put it in the box.
Talk about the job that he's done, Coach. Last year, he was a nice target for us. You think teams really are keying in on him, and he's just trying to find a way to get his hands on the football?
Not really. Tyron, no, we expect more and better. I feel like he got a couple drops on the year that he should have. This is junior year. He ain't that, that little kid that was running out there with 14 and Malik and Akeem and all them guys. He should be a big boy. And so every day we talk to him, it's challenging him about being great. He looks like what guys look like at NFL camps, but he has to continue to grow that mentality and play with that enthusiasm and also just that toughness day in and day out.
So with that touchdown, Coach, we go 78 yards and we're up 29-0. Next time we got the football with 11 minutes and 43 seconds left in the third quarter. Got it at our own 43-yard line on a 1st down and goal from the 8-yard line. You look at Jacorian Sewell, rushed up the middle, 2nd and goal from the 7. And then on a 4th and goal from the 7, Lorenzo Garcia with a field goal attempt. So give us your thought process there on a 4th and goal from the 7 with the wind. It looked like the wind had died down a little bit, but just your decision to go for the field goal right there. And I know the wind conditions, talk about that in that part of the game.
It was more so just the scores when you look at it. We wanted to go up 4 scores, and so that was the main decision. You see us go for 2 and don't get it at 22. And so, scoring that touchdown put us up, by at least 3 scores, and we wanted to try to get it close to 4 scores as possible. So, the wind was, to his back, there, and it was close enough. And we felt like he had opportunity, to be able to make it. And then also just wanted to kind of, make sure we seal up all the protection aspect of it. That was a really good thing. You see us do the swinging gate, earlier, and just good to see him have it go between the crossbars.
All right, so I don't know if it's me or just what we're seeing nowadays. I've seen the swinging gate more in the last 3 weeks than I've seen in probably the last 3 years. What's the purpose of it? I've seen other teams do it. What's the purpose of it?
Really just to keep guys from just teeing off on you, because you got a couple plays off of it, some 2-point, plays. If we get a particular look and they don't go over, we got some looks that we can do off of it. If they don't cover the eligibles, that's one of the biggest things, because guys got to really be honed in on that formation, because that's a legal formation. You got to find out who the eligibles are, and we have some plays off of it. And so once we transition and, they cover it well, we'll bring it back in. And now those guys got to recalibrate. They got to see which side they want to come from. So it just takes a little bit of the edge off, the rushers, knowing that, hey, look, we could throw the ball on the perimeter and try to get 2 points. And just kind of slow them up from rushing up the middle.
So the decision for you on the swinging gate, when you're doing the swinging gate, and then obviously when teams do that to us, what do you look for there? The same thing?
Yeah, the exact same thing. I'm scared, breathless, because there's so many plays now. You got so many innovative minds just coming up with concepts that you got to go over it. You got to spend a lot of time on it, because they may not kick it. They may sit there and say, okay, we got the particular look. Hey, let's throw it out here on the edge. So every Thursday, Coach Cove do a really good job of going over those looks, and we give them some different looks and scenarios off of it. So, that was my thing, after last week. Well, we got guys just teeing off on us, and we sitting here, having to spend all night going over swinging gate and 2-point plays. So let's, give them a taste of their own medicine. And so we'll continue to build that system, the way we doing it. And at the end of the day, once we bring it back, guys still got to hone in and really block and be firm inside.
I thought just a swinging gate. You see that in high school.
No, you see, look, I mean, you always reference the NFL and how they get, deals blocked. You even see them doing it now. Them guys, getting them guys over to the side to see it so they can, take the pressure off some of them guys running up the middle on them.
So with that, it was 29-0 at that point, Coach, and then 32-0. Valley got the football with 7:23 left, and we talked about the penalty. So let's talk about the targeting, Coach. Again, second week in a row. Valley got it at the 25-yard line on a 2nd down and 3 from the 47. Josh Brown's pass incomplete, but targeting Jalen McCroy, who was ejected from the FAMU game. Same situation. They reviewed it, and it was confirmed. What were you told? What did you see or didn't see?
Yeah, that was it. It was hit with the helmet. It was just one of them bang plays. He actually was trying to take his head out, but if you see the play, you see the tight end, he falls back inside trying to make a catch, and his head just happened to, be in the way. And so he's coming down trying to, script the ball out and make the tackle. But it just so happened that, when he put his face mask down, they ran into each other. So it was a good call, not from a standpoint of he was, using the crown of his helmet or using his helmet to make the tackle. It just so happened that it was a helmet-to-helmet collision as he was trying to break the ball up. And so I understood it, hate it happened for him, but it was way different from the one we had, last week.
Yeah, against Florida A&M. And then another situation, Coach, we had a player ejected. It was offsetting penalties, actually, on sportsmanlike conduct. And then we had a player ejected. This was deep in our territory. Talk about that particular play and what happened, what didn't happen there to get one of our players ejected.
Yeah, JB know better than that, but it was, like they said, they're going to always get the second one. They had a guy that kind of punched him, and he retaliated, which, he just got to be smart. He got to fall out like Fred Sanford and play the game. We talk about it. We actually, even, have a dress rehearsal where we have somebody to push one of the guys down and, make sure that they don't do it. And he just got caught up in his emotions. He's too old. Meaning playing for a long time to let that happen. And so waiting on the results to see, what they're going to do as far as him playing this week. But just a bad decision, at that moment.
So McCroy, what is his status for Saturday?
Yeah, he'll be out the first half of this incoming game.
And so now you're waiting for this situation, whether or not we'll be able to play on Saturday. Yep. When does that usually come down?
I'm not sure. This is my first time, with this. Ever been a part of it, And so, talked to them today. They watched the film, and so just waiting to get some feedback, ASAP.
So Valley was able to get a touchdown on that drive, Coach. Out of all that, 75-yard drive by the Delta Devils.
Yeah, that normally happens when you give a team 40 yards. No team in this league is that bad where you give them 40 yards and they won't score. And so we're just disheartened about that. That was the part, talking to Mr. Said after the game, that I felt like, that was the meat on the bone that we left, just not being sound. Being undisciplined, that whole drive, and so really didn't feel good at all about that part. I just had to talk to him about we can't get caught up in our emotions. We're going to be in some tough games coming down the stretch, and we got to have, better emotional intelligence to make good decisions and not put ourselves in a detrimental situation.
I keep thinking about these penalties, and I know you talk about it and you preach on it every week. We're the second most penalized team in the Southwestern Athletic Conference.
Yeah, and I look at it and we coach it and teach it, and try to, rectify it in certain ways. And so I know a lot of it, it is what it is on that part, but, sometimes I think it's really subjective because I look at a lot of other teams. I know they worse than us, Mr. Charles, when you look at some of it, and I don't see how they have 4 and 5 penalties every single game. Every single game. I'm sitting here, and I won't call a team, but I look every single week, and I'm like, how did this team always only have 3 to 4 penalties every single game? And so we got to do better. You start with me, but I won't take the edge of the mentality of those guys. For me, it's just the unsportsmanlike. Some of those. We just got to be smart. We can't get injected out of game. For punching and fighting and that whole deal. But blocking hard and playing hard. It's a part of it.
So I got to go back to what you just said a moment ago. So the officials always seem to catch the second go around. They missed the initial, but they catch the second. So you all go over situations where you just kind of lay out and let the officials see that particular. Is that something you all talk about? You kind of go over like, hey, just make the officials see what happened.
Yeah, that's kind of what everybody doing now. You look it around, you can pull it up on YouTube. A lot of time ESPN show it. There's a lot of flops, so a guy punch first and he'll just fall out. And a lot of time the refs, they'll just call it, because they just see a guy, maybe initiating some action, but they see him on the ground, and you can't review it. That's not a reviewable play. And so, you see guys that's smart. Malachi was the master that we could get under your skin and then have you to push him and you fall down and get 15 yards, and so you're constantly trying to just tell guys and teach guys that, but then you get some that just, they just strong head and just feel like, they got to retaliate. And so that's one of the things behind the scenes, just non-football-ish, that we got to just continue to preach and teach to these young, talk to these young brothers about, when they out in the environment, they out in, different situations in different areas, that you got to be smart. You got to be able to know how to win some and lose some, and you got to know how to just take your ball and go home.
Well, Valley got a touchdown out of that, and then late, Coach, in the fourth quarter, 11:27 left, they added a field goal to make it 32-10. And then talk about the decision to take the ones out and give other folks an opportunity. What's going through your mind during that point in that fourth quarter?
Yeah, development. We still in the development stage. You watch Cam Brown. Cam Brown hadn't played any this year. When he come in and play over, 50 snaps because, just how depleted the secondary is. So it was just good to see him, work his tail off and play meaningful, snaps. And so we expect him to do the same thing this week. But, for me, those guys, like we talked about doing homecoming, a lot of parents come and see them and then they work their tails off. And I feel like those are the future. Those are the guys that we're going to be expecting. You see Carl McDonough, man, have a big run, but he do it against number one defense, up on the top field, a lot. You see that's where Dame came from. That's where KO and those guys started from. So it's always a developmental piece, and anytime I can get opportunity to get those guys out there without blowing the red shirt, I definitely do that.
Is this time of the year, talk about and explain to people what the red shirt rule is. Is it still 4 games or whatever it may be that constitutes a season? And is that still the case? And do you all keep track of those type of things?
Yeah, we most definitely do. You can play up to 4 at any time, which is, a really good deal. Back in the day, it had to be the first 4. Anything, no matter what, after that, constituted a year. And so, we still, we understand it. Coach Fosserman, everybody keeps up with it, and that's the main thing. I want them guys to, everybody to at least get a chance to at least play 4, in some capacity, and use that as a litmus to be able to eval, going into the spring. And so when we get them chances, we'll be able to do it, without losing that whole year. And so I rarely will put a guy out there, with 5 games, playing. That's just not enough. I try to move some things around because I want them guys to enjoy a whole year. I know injuries happen and things happen, but I'm big on letting them guys getting that 4 games in and just letting it be a red shirt.
So what constitutes using a game or playing in a game? You dressing out the minute you step off that sideline and onto the field. That's a play. That's a game.
That's a game. Yep, 1 snap. You can dress out, and you can dress out every game and don't play and still, be a red shirt, but the minute you get in that game, that year, not the year, but that game counts.
So for 1 play, that's 1 game.
Yep.
And then you got 4, and then at 5th, that's your year burned.
That's it.
So how detailed are you in terms of tracking those things? That's a lot of players to track. I often wonder that, how you track all of that with so many players.
We got to carry logs, that doc, how much kids play. You got to turn it in every week. And so it lets you know. But behind the scenes, that's a major focus of us because we saying, hey, look, these core guys, we want to keep these guys together if need be. And for me, being over all of it, I'm saying, hey, look, he's going to red shirt, but he's going to play in them 4 games. So I keep a track mentally in front of all of it, especially those core scholarship kids and even some of the walk-ons. But I make sure that, I'm not going to burn no year. Yeah. Just, because a lapse of judgment for me. I'd rather not play them, even if I think it's close. But I really keep a good tab on it.
Final score, 32-10, the Braves with the win. So, Coach, obviously some things to talk about during the course of the game. And, we talked about it against FAMU, the high snaps, and Jalen Tolbert did a good job against FAMU. And it was good in the first half, Coach, but someone was asking me Saturday night after the game, some of the high snaps in the second half on Saturday. Talk a little bit about that and working through that.
Yeah, Coach took him out. Coach took him out, this week. And Jaden Wynn got some snaps. And so, Ron understands that he's a senior, all-conference guy. You hate, for that to happen, but you got to sell him down and get him, in a situation where you understand that's the most important part of the play. But it also shows, the depth and the trust that Coach Watson has in the next man up, and he understands the importance of it. And so it was good to see Jaden come in, not only play some center, for them snaps, I'd also play some guard.
You think you talked about against Florida A&M how he might have been nervous being in his home state. Were you able to put your finger on the second half of the Valley game?
No, I think it's just more so just him, muscle memory. He just got to, slow down, just slow down and do what he does, every single day at practice, because we don't have that issue. And so he just got to clean it up.
Damian Jones, coach, got some touches. Good to see him back in the fold a little bit.
Yeah, Damian, that was an amazing catch, but Damon's doing everything. Him and Omarion, in the special team aspect, he's showing up big. When he get opportunities to catch the football, he's doing a really good job. So kudos to him, and we'll continue to, feature him when he got opportunities to be open and get him the football, just knowing that he's going to continue to work through the special team aspect and being one of those dual-threat players.
Defensively, Coach, you hung in there, and you talked about the penalties and other things. You were talking about the Florida A&M game, and you mentioned how on the back end we were trying to get healthy. Just talk about the guys that we were minus. That was one of the questions that was texted me. Just some of the guys that we were minus on that back end, trying to get back as we get down the stretch.
Yeah, T. Haney, he played, some snaps, but didn't play the FAM game. You're talking about T.J. Jasper. He hadn't played since the A&M game. Elijah Ruffin hadn't played since the Pine Bluff game. Bakari McCall didn't play this week. He messed his knee up against FAM. Kevin McKelton, he came back this year. He came back this week. He didn't play against the FAM game. And so then we get Snow. He get banged up this week, and, Cam Brown comes, walk on, who hadn't played any. He hadn't played any this year and played his tail off. And so, now Jeff walking around, he limping, he fresh off ACL surgery. So it's, it's like a savage yard back there, Mr. Charles. We taking out spark plug, alternator, and moving pieces. And so, those guys doing a, good job of playing tough. And so we just putting the bodies back there. But it's at least 5 DBs that's on what we call the sick and shut-in right now.
How tough is that, and you're just trying to work through all of that?
It's hard. I think that group is, kind of like the O-line, just the communication piece, guys playing together, guys getting a feel for each other, hearing the same voices, seeing the same pitches. The back end is, is one of those groups, but, but it happens, and we don't make any excuses. And, I think Cam Brown is a prime example, a really good football player that, walked on and, been here for a year, and his time came, his next man up. And so we're going to oil this thing up, get this show on the road, and get ready to go get a win, down here in Texas Southern.
Well, let's look at the numbers quickly in this game. Jalen Tolbert, 261 yards passing. The long, obviously, 74 to Ty Warren. There was a couple of times in which he took off and ran with it. So it looks like, starting with the light bulb went off in Tallahassee, and there were some opportunities there against Valley for him running the football.
Yeah, he's going to be on the bench. That's the ultimatum. We know he's dynamic and can be with his legs, dynamic from the standpoint of maximizing his skill set and sliding and getting those hidden yardage. That's what he got to do and, close some of those gaps off for the run game. And so the one he won back, he got caught up in the wind. He had Tyron on a deep one early. It just kind of floated on him. That's the one he was really kind of mad at. But what we more, impressed with, he got, I think, 5 touchdowns in the 2 games and no interceptions. So he continue to protect the football, throwing it around like that. He'll give us a chance every Saturday.
I don't know if it's me, but and I just want to kind of tie things together here. So we were running the football pretty well early on, but the points, we were having trouble scoring points. Now, the last 2 games, we've averaged 30 points a game the last 2 games. But then running the football, we had 34 carries for 147 yards Saturday, averaging 4.3 yards per carry. We're averaging roughly 4.5 yards per carry the last couple of games. If you go back to the FAMU game, our points are going up, but it looked like early on we were able to run the football, but not scoring as many points. But you've also said as well that teams are really stacking the box on us. Are you early in the season? Obviously, we're running the football pretty well with Reggie Davis and Jacorian Sewell and all that. our team's kind of really honing in on our running game, and we've got to find another way to spring these guys loose.
Yeah, that's that's ultimately what's happening. But also, we got some guys that we feel like, on the edge, even early when you think about Northwestern and throwing it 40 times, we felt like we had some guys that could, do something with the football with those opportunities. It just didn't come to fruition early, and I think these guys are now starting to get a feel for each other. And so, I think that's what's starting to happen now. The points will come, more so from a pass perspective, than the run game. You got explosive, but it's hard to run through 8-9 guys, and we got some backs that can do it. But it's just hard to go 74 yards in one play when you got an 8- and 9-man box. And so we got to take what the defense give us, but if they're going to stack the box, it's just good now to see guys shouldn't be able to just line up with 8-9 guys in there, and we won't and we can't score. And ultimately we got to score more points than the other team.
Someone asked me to them, it seemed like we're running it straight up the middle a lot instead of bouncing it to the outside. Is that something that you're noticing? We need to bounce it outside a little bit more?
We just need to run it anywhere. You can't run it but two ways. There's inside or outside. That's just it. It ain't no other sides. And we trying to run it, anywhere they allow us to. But you got to understand, if you're looking at Alcorn football right now and you're saying, yeah, this is 2-6 football team and, barely hanging on to life and they run the football well, then let's not let them run the football. And I think that's what, really good coaches are doing. And we would be a fool to continue to just run it at a massive maximum rate, knowing that we're not having success. And that's unfair for the whole line to continue to just run, try to block 8- and 9-man boxes. And so, we got some guys on the edges we feel is good enough to be able to, maximize the opportunity when the ball thrown to them. But we also know it's going to be a time where we got to, get 12 personnel and get bigger packages in to run the football. And so, at the end of the day, we got to score points. And put our defense and special teams in a great situation.
I have seen the last few games the max protection for Tolbert, the big heavy package. I've seen that. Backs to his left and right, heavy guys to his left and right.
Yeah, those guys are, doing a really good job for him, and we just want him to be able to just see middle field open, middle field close, and have a really good sense of what the secondary is doing so he can make good reads.
261 yards throwing the football, leading the way. Ty Warren with the 74-yard reception. Kobe Matthews, we've talked about him. Jarvis Rush, Damian Jones. Omarion Blakes with a couple of receptions. Looks like, Coach, we're really spraying the ball around as far as getting receivers and tight ends involved.
Yeah, the system will get you the football if you open, and so that's how we got to play. And those guys are doing a really good job. You don't see the drops, at a high rate like you did, early in the year. Those guys are doing a really good job of managing the football, and so we expect them to do that, blocking for each other on the perimeter. And so it's just good to see those guys have opportunity to be successful on the edge.
Two players defensively, Coach, with double-digit tackles. Cedric Roberts with 12 and Jeffrey McElton with 10. Stamari and Edwards with 8. Snow with 7. Who stood out for you on the defensive side of the ball? Who played really well in your mind?
The defensive line, man. The defensive line, they really dominated the line of scrimmage. From a secondary standpoint, we didn't play well. From a safety and nickel standpoint, we didn't play as well as we should have. But man, the D line did a really good job. Coach Cove, challenged them guys, to create a new line of scrimmage and kind of stymie out that run game. And so I thought they did that for the whole game.
All right, 601-301-2611 on the text line. Coach, someone sent in a text. Walk on from Heidelberg, Tribble, number 38. Talk about him if you can.
Yeah, that's my guy, man. We just moved him up, last week, because of the injuries. And so didn't get a chance to play, this week. But he's traveling now. And so, just a good kid, any of those guys. And I think he was hand-delivered, from somebody, that was close to somebody in the program. But however, he's here, and he's a really good kid. Ag major, does a really good job, off the field. But he's going to be a good football player for us.
Yeah, and you're just trying to get as many players involved, Coach, as you possibly can. I mean, at this point, you talked about the attrition on the back end of your defense, and yet your team is just kind of holding up and hanging in.
Yeah, they tough. They tough. They all going tough. Limited resources has nothing to do with limited mindset, and so we don't make excuses. His next man up, these coaches do an amazing job. I can't say enough of them. You walk in the building, that record doesn't indicate, they work ethic and the time they putting in, and it's just a direct reflection of, what the kids are doing.
Appreciate the question. Coach, I'm getting back to the running game. I mean, I know when people talk about Alcorn football, and even Jay Walker kind of referenced it, does games with ESPN, he always thinks of the SWAC being good and Alcorn being a part of it. I guess, the championships that we won, the Celebration Bowl appearances, And, you talk about the running game. Just to talk about Ja'Cory and Sewell, Coach, and even Saturday. I mean, the longest run we had Saturday was 19 yards. What was underrated? And I know you don't want to keep slamming it in there if they're stopping it, but Valley's defense against the run, they were second in the conference going into last week's game against the run, only Jackson State. And Texas Southern's pretty stingy, too, against the run. Was it really a challenge trying to get something done against Valley running the football?
Yeah, everybody else had that same issue. They got a really good D coordinator that does an amazing job. He got some NFL schemes, schematics, and they did a lot of movement, up front, kind of gave you that Lincoln College, type deal where they were just running backwards through, and it was just hard to stay on track. And so those guys did a good job, of stopping some of the explosive run. But, I think our goal, if we can rush for 150 yards, regardless of the explosive between, whether one back, two back, or running backs by committee, now you see the quarterback starting to get some of those yardage, which is 30, 35, 40 yards. They're just lighten the box up, but it also just gives some throwing lanes for them guys to be able to catch the football on the perimeter.
So we had 147 net yards against Valley. So you were proud with the running effort? Yeah,
without a doubt. At the end of the day, we want to win, and whatever we got to do to win, we'll be able to do it. And so, Sue's an NFL back. This time next year, he definitely should be on somebody's roster. And he does an amazing job. And we're gonna continue to push the guys up front. But we also, as a play caller, those guys got to put the guys in the best position to be successful, no matter what it is.
At the end of the game, Coach, you and Coach Buckley had a pretty long embrace after the game. And I know you've talked about Coach Buckley and the job that he's done. You can't share any of that because that was a pretty long embrace there.
Yeah, I just told him thank you. I know Coach when he was at Mississippi State, and when we would go to the AFC conferences, we would have his minority DB sector where all minority DB coaches would be in. And one time I didn't stand up, thinking that because I was in junior college it wasn't good enough, and he told me to stand up, and don't be ashamed of where I am. And one day, I'll be, on that level. I think that time he was at Mississippi State. And so we always stayed in touch. So he was one of those guys that, a lot of coaches will tell you, hey, look, give me your number, let's stay in touch, or come see me. And then, they just kind of blowing smoke. But he was one that, anytime you could come see him, he'd give you cut-ups, he'd coach you up and help you. And so he said he wanted to be a head coach in the HBCU sector. He said that years ago. And so to see that come to fruition and to watch it in the Delta, with tough kids who was, like-minded as myself, I just told him I appreciate it, continue to work hard. And if he need anything my way, just give me a shout.
All right, well, let's look at our next opponent, Coach, Texas Southern University. And TSU, one of the hotter teams in the league, Coach, won 4 in a row. So when you look at Texas Southern, they had lost on the final play of the game to Prairie View 22-21. They lost to Lamar 35-3, and after that game, Terrell Buckley said, we got to have a come to Jesus meeting. I mean, it was tough. And since then, they haven't lost a game. They beat Valley, UAPB, Grambling, and then Virginia Lynchburg, averaging 39 points a game the last 4. So what do you see in Coach Dishman's ball club? They've got one loss. They're kind of on Prairie View's heels in terms of the Western Division. When we go there, what do you see in this TSU team?
Tough. I mean, ballroom brawl, tough. They got running backs by committee. It's physical, it's downhill, big quarterback. They can make throws, can run around, but it's going to be a physical ball club. I just told the guys before I came over here, get your shoulder shot ready, get your icy hot, and we're going to bang that sled tomorrow. But it's definitely going to be a ballroom brawl come Saturday.
This is the first time you said this all year.
Yeah, this one's going to be physical, real physical.
So that's kind of in Coach Dishman's mentality, play hard, play physical.
Yeah, they're going to run the football. They're going to run the football, and they're going to make you like it. Now, they got some little things off of it. But when you watch the tape, the physicality is the first thing that pop off. I think they had over 300 yards rushing against Grambling. It might have been 250 against UAPB. They're going to be down here, and they're going to run the football. And they got a lot of backs, big offensive line. But you can just kind of tell that NFL mentality. When you look at the scores, that they're not scoring a lot of points. It's kind of close, but that's because they running the football, bleeding you out. But in the fourth quarter, you tapping out. Because it's some 12 personnel power, split zone, inside zone, and they leaning on you, and then they RPO, you get some over your head. You look at that Valley game, Valley was right there in it down the stretch. But they did a really good job, on the road, pulling that thing out. And so it's going to be physical. This one here is going to be a bar knuckle fight.
Yeah, two close wins, Mississippi Valley and then Grambling. beating Grambling at Grambling. So that's definitely the case. Talk about quarterback K.J. Cooper, 6 touchdowns, the redshirt junior from El Paso.
Yeah, physical, going to run it. Not as explosive as the Josh young man we just went against, but he'll take what he can get. He gonna lean forward, on you. Think about it, 6'3", maybe 230. KJ was actually here on a visit a year ago, and so we know him, really well. And so we got to do a good job of making sure we change some looks. He's been around the block a while, and make sure we can get to him, get him on the turf. But we definitely got to stop him in that run game.
Texas Southern is number 2 in the league, coach, in total defense behind the Panthers. Why are they number 2 in the league in total defense?
They're going to take away what you like to do. You see them against certain teams, and they'll play your 8-man, 9-man box, and then you see them, versus some other teams that throw it around. They kind of more of a, quarters defense, middle field open. And so, anytime you're dealing with an NFL head coach, he's seen a lot of schematics, especially on the defensive side. And so you see him, change up some looks and give a lot of quarterbacks and offensive, guys some problems. And so they're going to stop the run. And then, make us, be dynamic in the pass game. So we got our hands full on all 3 phases, just with a really well-coached football team.
Coach, we're going back to Houston to take on Texas Southern. The last time we were there, November 12, 2023, and we know what happened in that game. And I remember you said that's a date that you will never forget. How much did you think about that this week?
None. I'm so displaced from that. I ain't even thought about it. I'm more so, right now in the moment. My thing to the guys Sunday was we off on the road. We got to go win a game on the road. We talking about building and being a competitive football team. No matter what, and win. We got to be able to take this show on the road. And so that's my challenge to the guys. To make sure they got their lunch pail with them, ready to fight, ready to work, and also being able to deal with the elements and winning on the road. So that's kind of the battle cry this week. And so we start 6:40 in the morning, ready to roll.
How do you feel about your team now than you did a week ago? We're just trying to find a way to get a win. We did beat Lincoln, tough loss in Tallahassee, got the win. How do you feel about your team now with everything that has happened? We got one more road game, Jackson State, after this one, but we got 2 in a row at home. How do you feel about your team going down the stretch here?
You're still, excited when these feet hit the floor, just to go over and fellowship with them, just to see, the things starting to come to light, and just understanding who they are, and they understanding, what we asking of them. And so I'm still excited to go in the building, to see them, because they figuring it out. You got some new guys coming in that's starting to play, but just the enthusiasm and excitement of those guys, watching film and starting to see, some of the mistakes they didn't make. Some of the mistakes they made week 1, week 2, they're no longer making it. Maybe some new mistakes, but we're not making the same mistakes as old. And so it's still exciting to go over and see them guys, fly around on Sunday. And we know they'll be prepared and ready for in the morning to get ready to go.
I know you've moved on from the Valley game, but it always feels good when you win a game, and it feels even more special when you can win at home, and we're able to do that on Saturday.
Yeah, I think you probably the first one that kind of got me in this at home, mindset. For me, I felt like on the road was a lot better, but it might have been that FAMU trip of being so far. But at home just really felt good this week, and it was the first time that I thought about, man, it just feels different. It feels like I got time to do things. I can see my daughter. I can spend time with my wife. I can get over and, had a walkthroughs. I'm looking at the people in the RV park on Thursday night, Thursday evening, and Friday. I'm like, wow, and that's pretty cool. But we at home, and so that was the first time, since I've been here, that I felt like, okay, this feels different being at home. And so, but now we got to snap out of it and got to get on the road.
Playing on the road is not easy. Just so much you got to keep in mind, and you got to pay attention to on the road. When you're at home, it can work the other way. We get a little too comfortable, and you got to have that balance. You're at the house, you're at home, but you also want to pay attention to detail even more so at home, because you do have more time to do whatever.
Yeah, that's what this one felt like. It just didn't feel like we was rushing, at all. And so we got to make sure we get all the I's dotted and T's crossed for this trip. And we're excited about it, to go 1-0 to get the first one on the road.
Well, Coach, we appreciate it, and let's get a win here.
We'll do it.
Let's get our second win in a row as we take on Texas Southern, the Maroon Tigers. Special start time next week. Basketball season starts next week. Next Monday night, we will be on the air at 4:30 to 5:30. So it'll be an hour show, 4:30 to 5:30. Lady Braves basketball gets the season underway right at the Whitney Arena here on the beautiful campus at 6 o'clock. So 4:30 to 5:30, the Cedric Thomas Show. And at 5:45 here on the Braves Sports Network, Lady Braves basketball as they take on Nicholls State. And I'll be in Tallahassee next Tuesday as Coach Morton's team opens up against Florida State. We'll be talking with Coach Morton at halftime of the game on Saturday. I'll be back in Tallahassee as the men open up against Florida State. And then next Wednesday, the Lady Braves take on MUW, Mississippi University for women at 6 o'clock. And at 6 o'clock next Monday, Lady Braves basketball. So 4:30. Cedric Thomas Show right here on the Braves Sports Network. Hope you can join us. For our producers, Jamario Brooks, Cedric Tillman, for Coach Charles Edmond here, glad you can join us. We'll talk to you next Monday night. So long.